How the heck did you get into economic development?
So I get in there and we have this interview, and at the end of it, the general counsel looks at me and he goes, "Do you have any questions for us?" I said, "Yeah, what the heck is economic development?" That's how I got in. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Economic developer Devin would have been site selector Devin's worst nightmare.
How do you deal with the pressure of the idea of you don't get paid until you close?
Remind myself that as long as I follow the process, follow the steps, keep doing everything the way that I'm supposed to do things with my clients, so long as I have enough diversity in my clients, it's all gonna even out in the wash.
So what is your favorite thing about working with Northeast Indiana?
Is the tenacity, because let's say I land a project up here, I know you're gonna do everything you can to make sure that they're successful. Fort Wayne, man, let me tell you what, on fire.
You're listening to the NEI Pioneer Podcast, where we showcase and share the authentic stories of Northeast Indiana. I'm not sure if we've said this outright before, but our podcast is for everyone. We have a wide range of guests on our podcast who all elevate the region of Northeast Indiana by sharing their stories. And I guarantee that if you stick around, you're going to be pulled into these amazing stories of the community that makes up this region. So on that note, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Today, we are excited to be partnering with another podcast for part one of a two-part episode. In our part one of this episode, we're going to be interviewing Devin Hillsdon-Smith, who is an economic developer, now site selector. His unique perspective in this industry is so valuable, and we were all ears to hear his insights. This conversation carries over into a part two, which you can find on Devin's podcast called Selectors Are People too. We have his part two episode listed in the description below. If you are coming from Devin's podcast, welcome. We're so happy to have you here. Phew, that was a lot of information. I don't normally talk this long in the introduction, so I kind of wonder how long it's going to take before they roll the paper transit.
Hello and welcome back, or welcome to the NEI Pioneer Podcast. I'm Jonathan Sacket, head of MarCom at NEI, and I am joined today by
Jackson Long, Business Development Manager at NEI.
And our guest today, who we're really excited to have, Devin Hillsdon-Smith, which he sounds like a warlord with that name. He's the director at Cushman Wakefield and the host of Site Selectors Are People too podcast.
Absolutely.
Welcome, Devin.
Thanks for having me.
We're so excited to have you here because we've got a ton of stuff to cover, and frankly, your insights are going to help us along the way. So I'm really interested in getting your feedback on a whole bunch of stuff. So let's get into it. So economic development.
Yeah.
How the heck did you get into economic development?
So I was in law school at the time.
Yep.
I was the head of a moot court team, which is kind of like an academic. You know, you're given a bunch of fake facts. You have to apply the real law to it, and you go in, you argue. It's a competition, right? You go up against other teams. This team, and the reason why I actually created this team was because I got a free trip 2 years in a row to Vienna, Austria. So
No
I figured,
way.
why not?
Yeah.
Right? But a huge undertaking to get from all the way through prep, practice, get ready to go, and get out there, because you're competing against teams around the world. And so one of my team members were leading up to when our first briefs are due to the quote unquote court. And he calls me and he says, "Devin, I have to drop out." I went, "Oh my God. Okay. All right. I said, just send me all of your materials you have. I'll wrap up your section of the brief." Silence. I went, "You haven't done anything, have you?" And he goes, "No, I haven't." Oh my gosh.
That's a good partner.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. So I could have drug him through the mud, could have made a big spectacle of it, right? Because that's what law students do, all these type A personalities. Mm-hmm. But I protected his reputation. I pulled 3 all-nighters in a row, got this thing done, made sure the team got to where we needed to go. Long story short, we come back and he goes, "Devin, I owe you." I said, "Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do."
To say the least, yeah.
Yeah, and he goes, "Do you need an internship?" I said, "Actually, I am looking for an internship." He goes, "So you need a legal internship?" I said, "Well, it's better than illegal, but yeah, I'll take a legal internship." And he said, "I work for this state agency called the IEDC. I'll set up an interview with the general counsel for you." I said, "Great." So I get in there and we have this interview, and at the end of it, the general counsel looks at me and he goes, "Do you have any questions for us?" I said, "Yeah, what the heck is economic development?"
Yeah.
That's how I got in.
No
I was
way.
just looking at, I just fell into, by way of a favor, I needed an internship, got into it, started off defending the agency against public access requests from the media. And then they figured I had done such a good job, they moved me over into regulatory affairs, where I managed relations between private industry and government, bureaucrats. So I cut red tape for a living. And then I absorbed 6 or 7 other programs, which a bunch of them I deployed into Fort Wayne, but the rest is history.
No way.
Yeah.
So did you ever end up practicing law at all?
In the sense that, tax credit agreements that we were pumping out, I was able to put those together. I had to get the blessing of the general counsel. Never worked in a law firm, right? Never worked in-house counsel, nothing like that.
Wow.
Always put the skills to good use, but no, other than that, I could never see myself being able to, shut up after 6 minutes of billable time.
Well, I did 1 year of law school.
Oh, yeah.
So for a guy like me, I'm more creative minded. Maybe you can tell.
Yeah.
And the thing about it was read, regurgitate. And I understand that the first year is the most difficult. Third year is probably the easiest. But it was so anticlimactic for me to do it. I couldn't get into it.
It's funny that both of you have a law school background because back in my day, I was forced by the law to go to school.
What? Why?
It's mandatory.
Okay, so any regret in that you didn't really?
No,
because obviously we're around legal wranglings all the time. With what we do. So I think that's helpful. Ryan Twiss, who's one of our partners and he hosts shows around here, he basically does our legal until it has to get to the attorneys for anything, any contracts, anything that we're looking over. But you need that. If you're in economic development at all, I think coming from a law background, law scholastic, whatever, I think it really is necessary. You've got to have somebody on staff that knows that stuff.
I think even, like in our roles, right, business development, right, either on the economic development side or now for me, the site selection side, it also helps frame how to navigate negotiations and interactions.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because law is all about they're just the rules of the game, right? Just like there are rules to relationships and interactions, right? The facts are what really make things up. And so I've always found that when I've, either been on the economic development side or on this side, negotiating, trying to posture, trying to get leverage, right? A lot of the principles that I picked up in law school, the Socratic method and just being ready, any type of question off the bat, it prepared me for where I am today.
Yeah, and I think it also, or at least from what I was getting from it, it was teaching you where to go, how to find things.
Yes.
And that if you have that, that's the answer to everything. Because one of the things that we find here with what we do, because I head up marketing here, and the thing is that I'm new. I'm not from Indiana. I don't know I didn't know economic development at all. I had zero experience in it. But if you can train your mind to know how to find answers, how to look for things, and find those resources. Mark heads up our basically insights. So he does our research and things like that. So he sends out things to us so that we know we're constantly in the know too. But if you don't have somebody that's doing that, you're kind of screwed.
Well, and you can make a really bad decision as an economic development organization if you don't know how to dig in and investigate the opportunity that's in front of you, right?
Yeah.
You can either miss out on opportunities or you can miss out on traps.
Yeah, the pitfalls, right?
The pitfalls.
Absolutely. And I think, like I said, I didn't know what I didn't know when I got here. I've been here 2 years now. And I think that just being able to have those resources, whether it's IEDC resource, RDA, SDC, all these things, whether it's going to them or if it's all these third-party things that we have to subscribe to so that we can get access to them, we're constantly being ranked top 5 this, top 10 that. But even just knowing how to categorize those things so that everybody in the system can find it. We're an ecosystem in and of ourselves at NEI. You have to be. Because when I see the LEDOs, the local economic development people that we work with, a lot of those are one-man shows. And I don't know how the heck they can do it. If you have to do your own marketing, your own research, your own reporting, your own acquisition, training, whatever.
And by the way, you've got a 24-member board that you report to.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. You got a 24-member board and you're 2 people sitting in an office wondering who's going to do the research for the day. So, I mean, it's a tough gig. That's what I like about our jobs here is that you feel like you're actually doing something and helping people.
Yes.
And particularly from where I came from, making commercials and things like that. You do
You're helping people find their way to the right product.
I'm helping people find their way to
just like you are now
to cavities.
To cavities.
So it's interesting. You kind of touched on it already, but one of the questions that I'd like to see if I can poke you on a little bit more is what the unique perspective that you bring to your work. Do you think that you have a unique perspective perspective because of law school, or do you think you have a unique perspective on economic development because of who you are? How's that for a question?
Man, that's a deep question. That's a real deep
I was going
question.
to get esoteric.
Yeah,
on that.
we get philosophical on the Pioneer podcast.
No, I mean, it has to be a mix of both, right? Because I am who I am because of law school and everything else.
Okay.
So I don't know that I can separate one from the other. Now, my background, the way that I've grown up, I mean, originally I'm from Canada.
Where?
Toronto area.
Get out of here. Okay.
Yeah, I'm from the Toronto area. You know, having my father's British. My father is British, born in England. My mother's Canadian, born in Canada. I'm Canadian, but I was actually born in the United Arab Emirates because my parents were working over there at the time. My brother was born in the States, right? So all of these different perspectives that kind of come in just my nuclear family itself, right? And the way that we've moved, and we still remember when we were leaving Canada, moving to the States. What is every foreigner's perception of Americans, right? A bunch of beep, right? Beep holes,
Yeah.
right? And unfortunately, Indiana was not the first state we moved to. First state we moved to was Jersey.
Really?
So
And you're not off to a good start.
Not off to a good start. I still remember walking down the hallway one day, and my mother was crying in the bedroom. I screamed, "Dad, come here!" And he said, "What's going on?" And he came into the room, and she said, "It's true. They're all a bunch of bleep holes."
Really?
Oh yeah. Like she thought we made the worst decision ever moving to the States, right? And then we moved to Indiana, and then realized this feels kind of like home. And so then I was started able to draw connections between different cultures, and it's all the above.
Yeah.
Right? I can't separate out the law school versus who I am that defines me. I mean, heck, the fact that I grew up in economic development doing all of the weird stuff that nobody else wanted to do, right? Dino tax credit, Creed tax credit, which are two redevelopment tax credits, all the regulatory affairs, urban enterprise zones, certified technology parks, rail affairs, broadband affairs. I mean, all that stuff instead of just negotiating incentives like most do.
Yeah.
And that's no knock against those who are incentive negotiators. Just I came at it from a very different perspective. I think that right there is what shaped my approach to economic development.
Wow.
The way that I entered.
Well, how old were you when you guys moved to Indiana?
Oh, fifth grade.
Really?
Fifth grade. So very young for myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, wow. Okay, that threw me for a loop a little bit. I didn't know because I thought I did. don't get so happy with
Yeah.
If okay, so then what about how familiar are you? Because I heard you had something to do with electric works.
Sure.
Yeah, can we talk about that?
Yeah. So, two tax credits that Fort Wayne was very good at taking advantage of back in the day when I was running them were the Industrial Recovery Tax Credit, or affectionately known as the Dino Tax Credits. They're big, old industrial dinosaur buildings.
Yeah.
Or the Creed Tax Credit, Community Revitalization Enhancement District. I can't believe I remembered that.
I can't believe you remembered that either.
That was impressive. I'm really proud of myself right now. Which there's a Creed in Fort Wayne, actually two of them, or there were. I don't know if they're still in place. But I ended up issuing over $120 million worth of tax credits into downtown.
$120 million.
Over $120 million in my 20s
Wow.
into downtown Fort Wayne. 50 million of that went to electric works.
Wow.
Yeah. And you have to remember, the last time I stepped foot in that building, it was still the old, dilapidated, rundown.
Was this the first time you've been here since it's been open? Get out of here.
Yes.
See, now I'm mad I didn't go to lunch with you guys.
See, and I never saw it throughout construction. So normally, you get kind of snapshots throughout the life of a project.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I saw the before and the after.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And man, my jaw dropped.
Did you guys get to go? Did you go over to the bowling alley or the basketball court?
Course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what's funny is because when I was doing my prep moving here, I saw all the battle that was going on around electric works. I never understood. You must have had an inside track on some of that debate.
Oh yeah.
Whether it was healthy or unhealthy.
It was. I don't think those types of discussions need to be held in public. And that's probably going to be a bit of a controversial statement, right? Because if it's a public incentive, the public has the right to know.
Yep.
But I think it's easier to find agreement and find common ground when you don't have the pressure of the public eye on you throughout the entire process. Mm-hmm. So I think it would have behooved everybody to have just come down, sat down at the table, figured things out instead of trying to slog it out in the media.
Yeah, and exactly, because and again, what do I know? I was an outsider reading up, just seeing what I was walking into, and I saw that it seemed to me, and what do I know? But it seemed like people were flip-flopping.
Yeah.
So, which is it? I would see two different quotes, and then I would see that they were attributed to the same person. I'm like, well, are you in or are you out? And that was, I guess that was also a hangover from the baseball field here, because people didn't want that either.
Yeah, yeah.
And boy, did that turn out well.
It's what you were seeing shots in time. You weren't seeing the full picture, but you were seeing snapshots of how the sausage was being made.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why it looked like there was flip-flopping.
I didn't think, listen, if I would have, just to do your research and read up on that stuff, you would have thought that it would have gotten shot down.
Yes.
It seemed like there was violent opposition to it.
I will tell you that at the state level, I'm not afraid to say this publicly now, I said no to those tax credits more than once.
Really?
Uh-huh. Because it just, in my mind, was not ready for me to put public incentives into the deal.
How ironic.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm glad they proved me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I ended up coming around to it.
Yeah.
Right? Now, it wasn't just me. Right? I had to go all the way up to the Secretary of Commerce for an award that large. Right? But that's a fascinating example of this intersection between confidentiality and public transparency in economic development, what you were looking at, especially as an outsider trying to figure out what is this new community I'm moving into.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And are they really that kind of cuckoo that, like, he's saying one thing one day and the next day he's saying something 180 degrees? Like, what is the leadership in this community I'm moving to?
Yeah.
Right?
Because I thought I must, then you start to ponder on it. And I was thinking, I must have read that wrong. And I go back, nope, I didn't.
But I'll tell you what, this community, I always used to give Fort Wayne grief because I would say biggest pain in my butt out of any community in the state, but only because this community has such aggressive, proactive leaders, and they're unwilling to take no for an answer, right? All the way through, even down to a parking garage project where I told them, guys, this is not the purpose of the tax credit. Don't care, we need it. Let's figure it out. Okay.
Yeah.
And guess what? You have the parking garage now.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and
strong community.
Having had several meetings and dinners and stuff with the folks from the IEDC, they always talk about, and this is Ryan's realm. Do you know Ryan Twist here?
No.
Okay.
I met him, I think.
Okay.
On the way in.
Because I got to tell you, the things that we've been able to do, the IEDC and these other entities tell us, I guess we're just more thorough, is what they tell us. So whenever we're submitting anything for approvals or whatever, and that's been impressive for me to watch, because I'm here to magnify, right? The platform and everything that we came up with, that's what I do. But if you don't have those people coming up with that stuff and have a solid, rounded plan of attack, what am I promoting?
Right.
You're giving me nothing.
They need to give you some meat to sell.
Absolutely.
Right? Some meat on the bones.
And so what other projects have you worked with NEI on?
Let's see. The Landing. Landing was another one. The Bradley Hotel was another one. Ash Financial, or Ash Brokerage, that building was another one, which was also tied into...
God, you're a one-man wrecking crew here.
I know.
Building crew in this
I'll
case.
say, listen, I've got two last names. You can name two streets after me, and I'll call it even. You'll be fine. Nobody has to pay me that $20 y'all owe me after all those years. No, I mean, you name it, I was probably involved in it. I mean...
Because I live in Promenade Park, that huge new building. Right past the Landing.
I'm assuming, I can't even remember all of them. I'm assuming that I had something to do with that one as well.
Wow.
And I don't, say that to be, braggadocious. That's just an example of, you have to remember, I was one guy covering the entire state for multiple programs, and I was pick up the phone for Fort Wayne more than anywhere else. More than like Indianapolis, I heard from them maybe once in a blue moon, right? They just weren't good at getting out in front of us and pushing and being visionary. Fort Wayne, man, let me tell you what, on fire,
Absolutely.
Right? On fire.
Yeah, sales guy here.
Yeah, I mean, I would say...
good contribution, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm great.
While I'm not a native to the area, when I do speak with people who have lived here for the entirety of their lives, they tell me that they can't even recognize downtown from where it was 10 years ago. And there's a lot of sweat equity that has to be put into that.
Yeah.
And I would certainly say your skepticism in terms of the initial talks about electric works was definitely warranted.
I will tell you, though, when I was sitting on, what's the name of the restaurant at the top of the Bradley?
Oh,
Birdie's? Birdies.
Yeah.
Sitting at Birdies and just looking at, I mean, it was packed. It was like a Tuesday night, Wednesday night. It was packed. It was vibrant. I mean, it felt like if I didn't know where I was, you could have been sitting downtown Indianapolis.
Yeah.
You could have sitting in the suburb of Chicago, right? It felt vibrant, dense. I mean, that level of activity that downtown Fort Wayne is seeing now.
Yeah.
Right. And not just downtown Fort Wayne. Look at all the other cities around Fort Wayne that are growing like crazy, right?
Yeah,
with their own cultural identities.
And it's almost like a wake effect both ways.
Sure.
Because the things that are happening in Wabash County and things like that, it's been impressive to be a part of.
Now, do you feel like the growth is manageable? Is it sustainable growth?
I think so.
Yeah.
From what I know, the question is always going to be, with us in particular, is right now everything is moving towards mixed use, right? So
Right.
I want the office building. I want to be able to walk to everything downtown. I want to be able to live here, and my building is self-contained, right? But it's tough because I see that happening all over, and my concern is, are the buildings coming back into the downtown? Are the companies coming back into the downtown enough? Right? Because we're kind of spread out. We're like a mall city, I would say. And because of that, you've got a certain mentality. It's so funny to me when people say to me, "Oh, wait, you went over there? God, that's way across town. That was 20 minutes." I'm coming from New York and Chicago. I mean, to go across town, you just wasted a day.
Mall city.
Yeah.
So Fort Wayne, the Mall of America. Oh wait, somebody else has that one.
We'll work on that. We'll get
See,
the
this-
marketing team
yeah.
together.
The branding here isn't too good.
We'll work on that together.
Yeah, that works.
Hi, everyone. We want to take a quick moment to shout out our podcast sponsors. Now, first, you might be wondering who I am, so let me introduce myself. I am Hannah Hannigan, and normally I'm behind the camera as the videographer, but today I wanted to be in front of the camera to shout out the people who made this podcast possible. Barrett McNagny and Sweetwater Sound are the two sponsors of our podcast, and they're both located in Northeast Indiana. If you don't already know who they are, let me introduce them to you. We're going to start with Barrett McNagny. As Fort Wayne has grown, the Barrett Law Firm has grown with it. Founded in 1876, Barrett McNagny is one of the oldest law partnerships in Indiana, and it's among one of the largest just in Northeast Indiana. They have the breadth of experience across a wide range of practice areas to provide you trusted legal counsel where and when you need it. And Sweetwater is actually the one we were able to purchase most of our audio and video gear from to make this podcast. So if you like how this podcast sounds or how it looks, be sure to check them out. Sweetwater, the nation's largest, and I would also add friendliest destination for music gear, is also your one-stop shop for all things podcasting. From audio interfaces, recording software, mixers, microphones, cameras, and lighting, Sweetwater has everything to get your podcast up and running. Enjoy personalized gear advice from their dedicated team of sales engineers, as well as free technical support to get your podcast connected and up and running. Really, what's not to love about that? So whether you already have a following or you're still chasing the next big thing, Sweetwater is going to be the ones to help you create a podcast that everyone will be talking about. So if you're interested in either of these companies, be sure to check out the links in our description. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
As you're talking about that, with your role in economic development, what is the biggest challenge that you have? What is the most difficult, least rewarding part of the gig?
Well, of economic development or what I'm doing now, site selection?
Okay, either or.
Let me give both.
Okay.
Economic development, I think it was the fact that folks assumed that economic developers, I'm still going to say we because I consider myself an economic developer at heart.
Yeah.
All we do is we do the whining and dining, the ribbon cutting, right?
Yes.
They don't understand the blood, sweat, and tears, the sweat equity that goes into getting these deals pulled together, and how many times you have the door shut in your face and you're told no, and how thick a skin you have to have, right? That's hard.
Boy, you two are singing from the same
Right?
same song.
You know
here.
what this is like. If you're batting 99 out of 100, if you're batting 1 out of 100, you've got a higher batting average than most economic developers in this country.
Yep, you're killing the game.
It is grueling.
Yep.
So that's probably one of the things that really bugged me the most, right? So, what do you call it? MarCom? Oh, marketing communications. MarCom needs to do a better job of making sure folks know what you guys are doing, right?
Absolutely. No, this is hand in glove.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it, because if we're not, the thing is that, the one thing that dawned on me is, look, we don't have Disneyland here. So we can't say we have Disneyland here.
Right.
So what we have to do is magnify the great things that we do have here and focus on it. I remember when I was a much younger person, one of my best friends ran a car dealership for a Lexus dealership. And he always used to say, if you don't have air conditioning in the car, sell power windows. So you're constantly in a pivot mode, right? Yeah. So which stands to reason now for you. So what's the most rewarding part of the job?
For economic development, the most rewarding part of the job would have been knowing that the efforts that I was put in, right? Like I chose to live in a community, right? Putting in my efforts should be something whereby the next generation chooses to stay in the community because of the efforts that I put in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. You have the tangible opportunity as an economic developer to make a difference in your community. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, doing brand marketing, doing any other gig, right? Being a lawyer in a law firm, right? You don't get that kind of reward, really. You can say maybe as a lawyer in a law firm, depending on what type you do, right?
I don't think there's a physical manifestation of what you were working for. Yeah.
Right. I mean, the idea that your neighbor down the street might have been facing foreclosure on his or her house because they just couldn't make ends meet because they couldn't find the right job. But because of you and your hard work and diligence that you brought in a new company that just happened to have the right fit for that person.
Yeah.
And they were able to continue living in the place they were with their, aging parents or something. How much rewarding can life be?
Yeah, that's right.
It's an incredible feeling.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
No, I don't mind all the dinners and stuff either.
Yeah.
Well, okay, all right. But see, that's what I wanted to ask you about because, Jackson, not only do we work together, we're good friends. And I think you were talking a little bit earlier about the misperception of being a site selector, that, okay, well, take me to dinner and I'll point at a hole and you can fill it. I mean, it's not that simple.
Right.
So, and having worked here now for 2 years and talking to the LEDOs, the local economic development people, and hearing their concerns, well, we can't get gas, we can't get oil out this far, we can't get power out this far. And then somebody comes in and wants 50 acres and stuff. You have to be a jack of all trades, but I think you have to be a damn good jack of all trades. That's me coming at it, not being a site selector. So, what would you wish people knew about site selectors? And the one thing that I would bring up is one of our LEDOs told me, he said, I think in his own words, he said, I think people don't understand the knowledge base that we have to have. I don't just have to have a building in my head. I have to do a needs assessment. And he always feels like sometimes they're playing it too close to the vest. They don't want to tell him everything, but they're not getting paid for that. The LEDOs are they're getting their salary. There's not a commission structure. There's nothing like that. And I still have to be an expert concierge and show you around. So I'm sorry, I'm taking it off of the question off of you. But I mean, is there that much of a misconception of what you guys do? Well, it must be commissioned. You must be.
For site selectors?
Yeah, for site selectors in particular.
Well, for site selectors, we get paid based on performance, right?
Yeah.
It can range from you get paid a commission if you're also a broker. It can be a performance fee. If you actually get the project done, then you get paid a certain amount. You can be put on retainer. So you're getting paid for performance, right? It's not just a salary and you're doing your work for clients. Some do, but in my flavor, there's multiple different flavors of site selectors, right? There's those embedded within commercial real estate firms, those embedded within law firms, within accounting firms, there's boutique firms, and we're all paid different ways, right? But for me, at least, I eat what I kill, right? So to your point, if I don't close something, if I don't make a project happen, I don't get paid. I might have put 18 months of work into that. I might not get a dime out of it.
Wow.
Right? But here's something I think that a lot of folks, and I did not realize when I was making the transition from economic development to site selection. And I've had a few younger economic developers reach out to me and say, hey, I'm thinking about making the transition. I heard you did this recently. Like, can you give me some tips? And the first thing I'll ask is, Jackson, do you love data? And they go, what?
Everybody says no to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you love data? No? Well, you're not going to make it. What are you talking about? Site selectors, you always see us out, at conferences, right? At big fancy events, right? Having the red carpet rolled out for us with site tours, assuming that, we make our decisions based off of connections and relationships. Connections and relationships are critical, vital components. But for one project in particular, I will probably review over 10,000 data points, over 1,000 PDF documents submitted across 60 different sites, 13 different states. And I have to find a way to find order within chaos.
Yeah.
So that I can present a compelling and in data integrity and data with integrity, a picture to my clients so they can make a data-driven decision.
Well, how can you keep up with all that? Because everything is changing all the time. How do you keep up?
Agreed. Process. For my team, at least, it's all about process. So we follow Lean Six Sigma. We follow the demand-based process.
Yep.
Right? And so it's iterative.
Okay.
Right. And I have a very strong team. We have a very strong process in place. We're very good at building out the financial models, the qualitative, quantitative analyses, so that when you're looking at, again, 60 different communities across 13 different states and everybody's speaking in different languages to you, you find ways to bring it all down. Right. And you can equalize everything so that you can paint a compelling picture that your client can actually use to make a decision.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was going to wonder just how do you deal with the pressure of the idea of you don't get paid until you close? So you're in a scenario where you basically wake up every day unemployed until at the end of the day you're able to find the right fit for the client at the given time. How do you deal with that mounting pressure coming towards you every day of I have to get something closed, I have to find the right solution, or else we're having hot dogs for dinner?
Yeah, because it's not a sales cycle that's a day.
Right.
This isn't point of
18
purchase.
to 24 months, right?
Yep.
12 to 18 months. When we flip that around, how do you feel waking up every day and you only have one boss who can fire you and you have nothing?
Not
For
very
me,
good.
I have multiple.
I
have multiple clients, right? So I have multiple clients. I have multiple opportunities to continue to get it right. Right. If one client was to fire me, right, I still have multiple others that I'm working for. If one was to fall through and I don't get paid, I still have multiple others. I had to go through that paradigm shift when I went from salaried employment to commission-based employment or work, right? Because I freaked out, right? That mounting pressure, right? And I still do. I'm being flippant about it. I freak out, freak out day in, day out. Are you kidding me? A $2,000, pet bill? What in the heck am I gonna, right?
Yeah.
I have to remind myself that as long as I follow the process, follow the steps, keep doing everything the way that I'm supposed to do things with my clients, so long as the market doesn't shift too hard, which the market always shifts, right? So long as I have enough diversity in my clients, it's all going to even out in the wash.
First of all, it's a great answer, but I got to tell you, it still has to be unnerving because, think about it. If you have zero guarantees and there's too many variables out there that you can't possibly control.
Amen to that. Amen to that. You know what? So the example I gave before about over 10,000 data points, over 1,000 documents, 60 communities over 13 states, 18 states. That was a real project I worked on.
No way.
We did all of that. It was very, very clear that the company needed to leave their current facility elsewhere in the country and move to one of our top recommended locations. And you know what? They decided to stay because they couldn't fathom the idea of having to get on a plane to go visit their factory from headquarters instead of just being able to go down the road.
Wow.
After going through that much work and pulling all-nighters and going through all those demands and all that analysis, and for them to make the decision based on, we just don't want to have to get on a plane to fly to our
100%.
factory.
Yeah, it's the wrong proximity.
Are you kidding me?
Wow.
My former boss, Brandon Knoll, who's now over at Plug and Play doing his thing, heading up
Great
the
guy.
Indiana VC field. When I first got into the game, he told me that really the best you can do in either site selection or economic development is tee something up perfectly for the parties involved. And at the end of the day, you're not going to have the biggest say. Of course, as a site selector, your opinion is you should move to this area or region that I have recommended to you. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to whether the utilities can push everything through, whether the client's happy with the given situation. And I would say it's really what makes our field different from a lot of others is the decision-making process. Really, you have to win quite a few battles before the war can even really be presented to you at the end of the day.
Even trying to at the beginning, you would think it'd be as easy as, Okay, so we know it's a $100 million project. There's going to be 300 jobs involved with it. Here's, $26.87 is the average wage, blah, blah, blah. To even get to those numbers, going from, hey, I'm your new consultant, to knowing those 4 numbers takes more work than you can imagine.
Oh, yeah.
These companies don't know how much they're actually going to invest in a project. They know that they have operational issues, or they are not meeting production quotas because they don't have enough production capacity in their existing facilities, so they need more space. But they don't know how much more space. They don't know how much that's going to cost them. They don't know how many more employees they're going to need, how many more lines they're going to have to run, right? So you have to, it's almost like a counseling role. You're helping them go from the board of directors for this company was fed information from senior leadership. They looked at it and said, and then directed senior leadership figure out a solution, and then it starts snowball affecting all the way down. That's kind of what we have to work with.
Wow.
Right? And so
You're like a mathematical concierge.
I have a different term for it, but
Is it safe?
how about a hoarder of data?
Okay. Fair. Well, I mean, look, if it works, it works. And I think, a lot of it comes down to...
That might have to be cut.
A lot of the things that we see, it comes down to, you got to check all these boxes, or as many as possible. And it's not always possible. It just isn't. No. And, you have to have one foot in reality and one in the future. And that's what we're trying to do. Because, right now, everybody is banking on, particularly when it comes to Fort Wayne, they're banking on people coming closer into downtown. So, because you're talking about a place, Nick Dara, I think Nick who works here, he was talking about a lot of the site selectors that come here. They have a checklist, and they say this, and as he's watching that checklist, that we might get eliminated at question 1. Now, and it's one of those things where you can't sell around it because they think they've got their process in place, but half the time they may not know what they're really looking for.
Right.
That's the trick.
They may think they need 10 megawatts of power.
Yeah.
When they really come down to it, well, we really only need 3.
Yeah.
And you got eliminated because you were at 7.
But that's the checklist.
But that's the checklist, right?
Yeah.
But you have to go through that, because if we are told by the client and by the client's ops team and the client's design teams that for us to be able to run this facility at full tilt, we need 10 megawatts of power, then that is the number that we need. And if we need it by this date, that's the date that we need it by.
Yes.
And if your community only has 9.5 megawatts,
nope,
10 is a hard stop. I'm very sorry, but you know what? We're matchmakers, and we just weren't the right fit.
Yeah,
that's all. Don't try to sell yourselves around it. Don't try to make it sound more rosy than it is. Because guess what? At the end of the day, here's something to tell you: we're going to find out one way or the other. Like I've said this before, I'll say it again. Economic developer Devin would have been site selector Devin's worst nightmare.
Yeah,
I was too good at the selling part.
Yeah. I can see that. I can see. No, I'm serious. I'm not even.
Compliment ever.
Hey, I'm not even trying to be nice to you at this point. I think the thing is you've got conviction, and I think, and that's why we're winding down on time here. That's why I wanted to bring up. I definitely want you to talk about your show.
Yeah.
So, what made you start this? Like, how did you? Because are there many shows out there that target the site selectors? Podcasts in particular?
Not like this.
Okay.
How did I start this? So my team is based in Atlanta. I'm in Indianapolis, so I work from home.
Yeah.
As you can tell, I like to talk, right? And so I was getting to the point where I was talking to the wall a little too much.
Come to my house.
Yeah, right.
You and I'll take turns talking to my wall, Steve. Yeah,
Oh, your wall's name is Steve too? Really?
Finding commonalities here
Where's
is what
that?
economic
Is
development
Is that
are
where
all
Steve's
about.
been those?
Steve's been at your
Yeah,
house.
my grandma always said it's okay to talk to yourself as long as you don't start responding.
There you
right?
go.
And I got to the point I was so borderline that I realized I needed another outlet. And then I started thinking, what am I passionate about? And really what I'm passionate about is the intersection between economic developers and site selectors and how we can do better to empower each other across the table and make the overall industry better, right? Why is it that as a site selector, I wouldn't want to give a community feedback as to why they lost?
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Well, the short and easy answer, right? The postmortem.
Yeah.
The easy answer is I'm too busy, right? Well, guess what? Make time for it. Because don't you want these communities that got far enough along in the process to be that much better?
Of course.
Right? So I started thinking about it, and I wanted to find a way to dig into the human side of the profession. I want to start humanizing the people behind the profession. And so we tackle topics like, how do we empower each other? How do you build trust in this profession? How do you develop relationships in this profession? What's the impact of AI on the human aspect of this profession when it's so data-driven, right? So it's something I've always been passionate about. I think we can do better as an industry at working across the table collaboratively versus just this black box RFI submission.
Yeah.
And so I came up with it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Boy, it sounds very similar to the whole Pioneer thing that we did here. It was about empowering people to think about us differently. If you don't humanize the technology, it's useless. I used to tell my tech guys in meetings all the time, don't go in there telling people the definition of HTTP. You just eliminated anybody's interest in what you're about to say. And speaking of which, we got you a couple of things here. So just to commemorate your time with us, those are parting gifts from us. Wow. And that brings me to our rapid fire questions and you can go ahead and open it. So what is the coolest gift you've ever received as a site selector, economic developer, whatever?
Coolest gift I ever received was as
besides
a site
the hat
selector,
that we gave you.
Right, besides this ball and hat. I meant that. I love this hat. I love this color too, right? Because I've got two parakeets at home, two birds, and one of them is this exact color. It's like
Is
the
one
blue.
of them named Steve?
That's awesome.
Okay.
Marvin.
All right.
No. It's actually Luke and Leia Skywalker.
No.
That's
Well,
awesome.
it's Luke and Liam now, because we found out it was two boys, not a boy and a girl. But anyways, coolest gift.
You kept it with the L, that's
got
all
a
right.
custom-made belt made for me in Texas.
Wow.
And it was just like there was so much thought that went into it, right? And how they knew my pant size, I don't know, which is a little weird. But you got to go through the process.
Hidden cameras,
Yeah, right,
with
yeah.
measuring tape in them.
Yeah, so a really cool custom-made belt that I'll rock, anywhere I go, except today apparently.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like you had some data lovers down there in Texas to know that before you came in.
See, they did their homework.
Absolutely, they did. All right. Well, next rapid fire question. What is the most unique trip you've gotten to take for work?
Most unique trip that I've ever had or gotten to take for work. Got to go to Surf City, USA, to go visit a client, and that was only the excuse for us to get out to the beach.
Of course.
No, here's the most unique trip ever. I got to stay on Rattlesnake Island in Lake Erie, which was the former home of, it was like the vacation spot for the mafia back in the day.
Really?
Yeah, and it's invitation only to get out there. I almost fell into Lake Erie at 3 a.m. in the morning, solely because I was tired.
Right. Of course. Dehydration
Yeah, that
throughout the
works.
day.
Yeah.
It gets hot out there in the summer. Of course.
Yeah.
All right. Next one would be, what's your favorite topic to talk about on Site Selectors Are People too?
My favorite, it's not a topic, but my favorite format that I'm finding, right? So I've got mine where it's just me talking for 30, 45 minutes to an hour, right, about various topics. But I'm really finding that I love having these types of conversations with others. I think the format's going to be changed up pretty quickly here because there's so much you can pull out of these conversations. And I learn so much more about these folks too. So it's deepening my relationship with that professional. But it's also, I think, more intellectually stimulating for the listeners.
Absolutely. And I'd tell you what, as a guy who's in contact with all sorts of site selectors all the time, your show is absolutely blown up in that community. When I was down in Greenville, all folks could talk about was, do you know, you're from Indiana? Do you know Devin? Yes, I know Devin. Do you know about Devin's show? Yes, I know about Devin's show.
Do you know he likes to wear hats?
That's the new question.
That's
the new question to fire back at him. So what is your favorite type of project by industry?
I'm a big fan of large-scale, complex, heavy manufacturing projects because it takes so much.
Absolutely.
Right? There's just so much to think through, and I love the logistics of figuring out every little part that goes into it, right? And when I say heavy, I don't necessarily mean dirty, right? But I mean big, heavy, intensive, manufacturing-intensive projects. I don't care what industry it is. The more manufacturer intensive, the better for me. Because guess what? I'm learning more about how things are made day in and day out. Right? I mean, the fact that I've learned how magnets are made, and you think it's easier. No, magnets, it takes a lot to get through to a magnet that goes into, a wind turbine or into your components in your car, right? The fact that I've learned the upstream, downstream of how all of that works, I mean, it makes me smarter day in and day out, which, I'm starting from a very low level here. So
No, I think that's one of the prerequisites. You have to be hungry for information.
I'm hungry for knowledge.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I would tend to agree with you on that because I'm the industrial guy over here.
There you go.
And in about a year and some change into this role, I've come to find that the iPencil argument is applicable in pretty much every industry. And I think that's what we do well in Indiana. As I like to tell folks, if we were Cancun, I'd show you the beach, but we're Indiana, so I show you the infrastructure.
There you go.
So we're designed to build it cheap and
that's
ship
a sexy
it quick,
retort
man.
there.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're free to use that.
You can
next
use that.
time.
Yeah,
All
that's
right, fair enough.
Full permission.
Yeah.
So, what is your favorite thing about working with Northeast Indiana?
Well, it's you.
Can we cut? I'm going to tear up
This
here.
show is, thank you for joining us on.
No, I've said it before, right? It's the tenacity of the people up here. I think it's a breath of fresh air because a lot of communities will not fight as hard as how I've seen Fort Wayne fight, right, for its future. And even though I've been in the receiving end of that stick before, right?
Yeah.
It's truly my favorite thing about Northeast Indiana and doing business up here is the tenacity, because let's say I land a project up here, I know you're going to do everything you can to make sure that they're successful.
Most certainly.
Plain and simple.
Man,
So it is
put
to
him
people.
on our payroll.
Absolutely. What is your favorite thing you've experienced in Northeast Indiana?
Oh, Electric Works.
Electric
Yeah.
Works.
Whoever put that deal together was brilliant.
I heard they had a real smart guy working on that down
Yeah,
there.
I heard good things.
It was Andrew Luck or something who did it.
I think it was
they
Andrew
said,
Luck.
Please
Yeah.
don't mention a guy named Devin. That's all I know.
Yeah, right.
But Electric Works would be it?
Yeah, I mean, there aren't too many things around the country like Electric Works, man.
No,
I mean,
not yet.
not yet. I mean, you've got, Bottle Works down in Indy, which is cool in its
Yeah,
own
that's
regard.
true.
But the character of this thing, I'm a sucker for old historic buildings that have gone through an adaptive reuse, and you can see how it's going to transform that section of your community,
Absolutely.
right? And now you've got your bookends, and it's going to be crazy how it blows up.
And that's it. That terminates it. You're done with the rapid fire. Devin, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I got to tell you, you are an interesting guy, and I could talk to you much longer. I could. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Remember to download us on Spotify and Apple Podcast. I'm Jonathan Sacket, and on behalf of the MarCom team, the Jackson Show, and all of NEI, thanks again for joining.
Thanks, bud.
Hey guys, I'm back to remind you that part 2 of this conversation is listed in the description below on Devin's podcast called Site Selectors Are People Too. If you need recommendations on other Pioneer Podcast episodes to watch, these are 2 that YouTube would recommend to you, so give them a listen. Thanks guys, and we'll see you next time.